Hi, so yes, as Tony mentioned, I've been a graduate student in the lab for the past 5 years now. I'm in the neuroscience graduate program here at Davis. And so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of my dissertation work and how better understanding cognitive control challenges in children with the 22q deletion might help us better understand some of the challenges that these kids face in the real world. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about what is cognitive control. So technically it can be defined as a system for guiding behavior based on one's goals, plans, and context. And this is important because at any given moment we're bombarded by so many things in our environment: sights, sounds, smells, in addition to thoughts and other things going on in our head. And so it's important to be able to focus on the relevant things in our environment while inhibiting other irrelevant distractor things. And so there are a number of different systems that help us focus our attentional spotlight where we would like to. For example, there's a system that responds to external cues, such as if you were to hear the fire alarm go off in the back of the room, you might turn your attentional spotlight back there to see what was going on. Also, there's an internally driven system that helps us re-navigate our reorient our attention based on our goals. For example, if you decided that it wasn't in your best interest to keep listening to me, you might turn your attentional spotlight down to the paper in front of you. So again, thinking of cognitive control as the ability to suppress irrelevant thoughts and actions while maintaining or strengthening others, it is particularly important to inhibit those other extraneous distracting things in the environment. So we need to inhibit other extraneous things and other responses that might not necessarily be in our best interest when pursuing our goals. And so here's a cute little example of this. Here, kids are given a marshmallow and they're told that if they don't eat the marshmallow for 2 minutes, they'll get a second marshmallow. And so here the goal in mind is to wait for a second marshmallow, but the desire to maybe eat that marshmallow in the interim is a response that one needs to try to inhibit in order to obtain the ultimate goal. So the woman is giving him his marshmallow, and she's saying, if you cannot eat this, you're going to get a second one after 2 minutes. And he's thinking about it.
When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have two.
And they're thinking, that sounds pretty good. If I can hold out, that would be nice. So my goal is to wait for a second marshmallow. But it's very tempting to want to eat that other one in the meantime. So I'm trying to inhibit that desire to eat that marshmallow, but it's really hard.
You can see the stress, right? You see the stress of doing something like that.
It's pretty anxiety-inducing as you're thinking about this dilemma. Some can't make it. Very stressful. So now, better understanding this kind of processing in children with 22q is important because previous studies have indicated that these kids do have some trouble with cognitive control. But what exactly is the nature and extent of these impairments, and specifically with respect to response inhibition, as we were just talking about, what might be the nature and extent of response inhibition components of cognitive control in 22q, and also how might these impairments change throughout development? So, for example, in typically developing children, response inhibition improves throughout development. So a young kid would be much less likely to hold out eating that marshmallow than an older kid, for example. So this is something that improves with age. And so what does the development of this processing look like in 22q relative to typical kids? Is the developmental trajectory similar? Is it shifted? How does performance differ over time in these two groups? And so these are things that we're interested in here in the lab. And in order to try to study these things within a systematic experimental way in the lab, we've designed a computer game to have to test the kids on these kinds of things. So here I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the whack-a-mole game that Tony first introduced. And then the data that we'll be looking at comes from 27 children with 22q in the 7 to 14 age range, some younger, 7 to 10-year-olds, and older, 11 to 14. And so 27 children with 22Q, and 22 typically developing children. So here, let me just give you an example of how I present the game to the kids who come and visit the lab. So they're looking at the computer screen, which is right here, and I say that a mole is trying to dig up your garden. And as soon as you see the mole, I want you to press a button as quickly as you can to squash the mole and make him go away so he doesn't dig up your garden. So here's a picture of the mole, and he's tricky, and he tries to appear in many different disguises, but no matter what he's wearing, as soon as you see him, I want you to press the button as quickly as you can to make him go away. Now, sometimes a vegetable will pop up in your garden, and since you're trying to build your vegetable garden, when you see the vegetable, don't press anything. So you just let the vegetables grow, and so here is a vegetable, here is a vegetable, and here is a vegetable. But remember, when you see the mole, press the button as quickly as you can. So now here, if I can have all of you practice, if you can hold up one hand, and when you see a mole, I want you to tap your hand as quickly as you can to squash the mole and make him go away. Are you ready? Okay. Good. Great. Fantastic. Good. Oh, that was actually pretty good. But I did hear that some of you still squashed the vegetable, so it's difficult because your prepotent response is to continue to press the button, since most of the time a mole will pop up. And so it is difficult to withhold this prepotent response to press the button even when you see the vegetable. But most of you, I think, held off, so very good job. And so here, as you can see, the mole pops up much more often than the vegetable, 75% of the time. And a vegetable will appear either after 1 mole, after 3 moles, or after 5 moles. And then the main measure of performance that we're looking at is performance accuracy on vegetable trials. So what was their accuracy in withholding the response when a vegetable popped up, either following 1, 3, or 5 mole trials? And so overall, there was not a statistically significant difference between groups. So if we're looking at performance accuracy on the no-go trials, in the typically developing children in blue and the children with the 22q deletion in pink, there wasn't a significant difference overall. But when we break it up by these different trial types, we see that over time, the typically developing children, well, over time being more preceding moles, they show an improved accuracy such that with more preceding moles, they're starting to expect that a vegetable might appear, and this is manifest in better performance. Whereas in the children with 22q, it seems that performance is the same across the board. So again, as Tony mentioned, while they're doing pretty well, they have 70% accuracy over time, they're not showing a change in performance based on more moles. They don't seem to be showing these effects of some kind of expectancy of that a vegetable might appear over time. So unlike typically developing children, some children with 22q do not do better when more go trials indicate an upcoming no-go trial. Interestingly, looking at response time between groups, there isn't any difference. And so this is response time when pressing the moles. So as you can see here, this is response time on the y-axis. On the x-axis here, this is the number of moles following a vegetable. So on the first trial, everyone presses the button really quickly. They know that it's going to be a mole, and they're ready to go. With each subsequent mole that appears, their response time is getting slower and slower. So you can see that this expectancy is building, that maybe a vegetable is going to appear and we should be slowing in preparation to be able to withhold that response. And as we saw, this is clear and typical that with this slowing, you see the improved performance. But even though the children with 22q do seem to be showing this monitoring of upcoming possible vegetables, for some reason they still aren't able to withhold that response in the end. So it's interesting to know that the monitoring of this upcoming inhibitory response seems to be the same between groups. However, it's not clear, or this is not manifest in the performance error that we see in 22q. The next thing we did was we looked at differences between the age groups, as I mentioned, splitting the two groups into a younger 7 to 10-year-old age group and a slightly older 11 to 14-year-old age group for the typicals in blue and the children with 22q deletion in pink. And so there doesn't seem to be a difference in the younger age group. It seems that performance accuracy is approximately the same. Typicals, as you would expect, show better accuracy with age. So the older typicals are performing better, but that does not appear to be the case in the children with 22q. And then again, looking at the different trial types, you see that the typicals, younger in light blue, older in dark blue, show a shift up across the board of better performance with age. And then it seems that in the pink, in the children with deletion, on average, there appears to be that the older group might be performing worse than the younger age group. And then again, same thing, response is equivalent between groups. So while the typically developing children might be showing an improvement with age, it seems that some children with the 22q deletion are not getting better with age. And I say some children because it's not necessarily everybody. It seems that the variance is just getting larger with age. So variance is the spread between, it's the distribution of data points. And so variance is getting larger such that in pink, in the 22q folks here, these are individuals. So performance as a function of individual's age. The older children with the 22q deletion seem to be showing a large spread of performance. And that's apparent in this box plot as well. And so this increased performance variance with age in children with 22q suggests that there might be some individuals that might have atypical development of response inhibition. And so this is just a hypothesis to test. This is a cross-sectional study, which means that we're just looking at a number of individuals of a wide age range. So we're not following individuals over time. That would be something that would be interesting to look at next. Here we just see that it would be interesting to try to better understand what factors are contributing to some of the older individuals' larger variance. And so what we can take away from this is that neurocognitive experiments, such as these computer games that we can have the children play in the lab to better understand some of the different cognitive processes going on, including response inhibition. These might help us better understand the challenges in cognitive control that we're seeing in children with 22q. And better understanding individuals' performance patterns might help us identify those with more or less cognitive control abilities. And then part of the larger study of better understanding many other components of these children's cognitive processing, anxiety, and a number of other things might help us better identify risk factors leading to better diagnostic tools and targeted therapeutic intervention down the line. And so thank you to everyone in my lab and especially the participants and all their families in the Mind Institute.